All right, diving into the next question, I decided to do this separately because metrics are a love language at Mixpanel. So the question that we've got here is curious to know how you set goals for your community. What key metrics do you track? So it's a blend of two things. In terms of setting goals, our goals definitely sit underneath the overarching goals for retention and engagement and delivering value that are set by our customer success team. So my role used to sit in marketing, it actually sits within our customer success and professional services function. So in that sense, I treat everybody in community like they're my customer, just like when I had a defined book of business as a customer success manager. It's just that everything's at scale and there's a couple thousand of them as opposed to what was before. Setting goals, it will always sit underneath the team goals, which ultimately sit underneath the company's strategic goals for growth, for retention, for adoption, for brand visibility, all of those sort of different things. So those are set each year. Our financial year runs February to February. And typically it's around this time of the year that I'm planning for the following year. We do have what is described as a VSEM, so vision, strategy, sorry, vision and purpose, strategy, execution, and then metrics. And then what we have within those metrics are a number of different things. Now, if you're familiar with the Mixpanel analytics strategy framework, you will be quite familiar with this because what we end up doing is we have what we call the focus metric, which I mentioned before, which is weekly active users. Then underneath those, we have level one, level two, and level three metrics. Now, level one are things like how many people are signing up, how many people are returning. But then level two, we're then starting to break that down into details. Okay, when they return, what is it they're doing? So, what's the engagement that we're seeing on events? What's the engagement that we're seeing on self-serve content? What's the engagement that we're seeing per channel, per region, right? Per industry, per vertical? We start to get into those granularities. And ultimately, they all feed into each other because the logic is even if you build your metrics from the top down, you actually move your metrics from the bottom up. So it is around those little initiatives. How successful is that weekly Q&A is going to feed into how impactful that is on folks engaging, exploring new reports, building up a habit of using the product, right? And in turn, that will then feed into our WAU, so weekly active users or our monthly active users. We look at the total new users. I track any users that are 90 days inactive because ultimately that is a sign that perhaps there isn't value there. And remembering what I was saying before, I welcome lurkers. A lurker is still a very valuable community member to me because you lurking and not necessarily responding or engaging doesn't actually stop you from getting what you need, from actually diving into the resources that are actually provided and getting value from that. And that's why it's so important to see community engagement alongside product engagement. One of the things I know and I believe to be true, we can ask people what they think, how they feel, what they want. But more often than not, if you've got the right data in place, they will just show you what it is that they want, right? If I've got a favorite report, I will show you that in my activity. I'll show you that in my usage. So it's really just important as a community manager or community leader to be there at that point of signaling that, right? To understand the behavior so that again, for me, like I said, the 30, 60, 90-day checkpoints that I send through Threado, they are very light because some of the granularity I'll be able to see, right? So I can kind of come in and let them above. I'm not asking you, have you used this report? Have you used that report? I am asking you, what's your biggest problem right now? What's your biggest challenge that I can support you around? And that's an easier question. And I think that's one thing in general. We have to speak the language of our user. We have to speak the language of our community member. And we have to really, really remind ourselves and humble ourselves to understand that what they find valuable isn't necessarily what we think they find valuable. And we'll always go much further when we just ask them and we provide that. In many senses, that's why I see my role as community manager as a concierge of somewhat, right? A host of some kind. I'm here to say, how can this be more impactful for you? How can this be more useful for you? And go off and go about creating that, right? Creating the environment for that, creating the solution, creating the event, bringing in the resource, right? So that again, we create this great feedback loop that ultimately increases the impact because again if you've said that you've wanted something you're kind of likely to use it. Not everybody, right? Not everybody, we are humans at the end of the day, but that's an important thing.